Ben woke up with a jolt, his heart pounding as the vivid dream faded from his consciousness. The battlefield, the smoke, the fire, it had all felt so real. And at the center of it all, that colossal metal figure with burning red eyes. The ancient voice still echoed in his mind. The Titan awakens, and the Omnitrix holds the key. This wasn't just any ordinary dream. For Ben Tennyson, wielder of the Omnitrix, strange occurrences were practically routine. But this felt different, more like a warning than a dream. The desert sun blazed overhead as the rust bucket rolled down an empty highway. Inside, Ben leaned against the window, lost in thought. The air conditioning struggled against the heat, and Grandpa Max hummed along to an oldies station on the radio. Gwen was buried in one of her spell books, occasionally glancing at her cousin with mild concern. Ben hadn't been himself since waking up, quieter, distracted. "Earth to doofus," Gwen finally said, closing her book. "You've been staring at nothing for the past hour. What's going on?" Ben shrugged, not wanting to admit how much the dream had unsettled him. "Just thinking." "Well, that's dangerous," Gwen smirked, but her eyes betrayed genuine concern. Before Ben could respond with his usual comeback, the ground beneath them began to tremble. At first it was subtle, just a slight vibration through the rust bucket's frame. Then it intensified, rattling the windows and sending loose items tumbling from shelves. "Earthquake?" Grandpa Max questioned, slowing the RV. The trembling grew violent. A deafening crack split the earth directly ahead of them, forcing Grandpa Max to slam on the brakes. The rust bucket screeched to a halt just yards from where the highway had begun to fracture and split apart. "Everyone out," Max ordered, already unbuckling his seatbelt. They scrambled outside into the scorching desert heat, just in time to witness something impossible. From the massive fissure in the earth, an enormous metallic hand broke through the surface, gleaming under the desert sun. It was at least 30 feet across, with articulated fingers that flexed and clenched as if testing its mobility after centuries of dormancy. That's from my dream," Ben whispered, his eyes wide. Before anyone could process what was happening, the air around them changed. A high-pitched whine filled their ears as the atmosphere seemed to compress. Looking up, they saw the source, a massive spaceship descending from the sky, its engines roaring and sending waves of heat rippling over the sand. It was unlike any alien craft they'd encountered before, angular, with pulsing red energy coursing through visible conduits along its hull. The ship hovered about 50 feet above the ground, and a ramp extended from its underside. Silhouetted against the bright interior light stood a figure, tall, imposing, and unmistakably alien. As the figure descended the ramp, details became clearer. He stood at least 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders encased in ornate armor that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. His skin was a deep purple, marked with ceremonial scarification, and his eyes, piercing yellow with vertical pupils, locked immediately onto Ben. "General Draykor," the alien announced himself, his voice deep and resonant. "Supreme Commander of the Kronos Armada." He stepped onto the desert sand, seemingly unbothered by the heat. "And you are the human child who possesses the Omnitrix." Ben instinctively stepped back, his hand moving protectively over the device on his wrist. Grandpa Max moved forward, positioning himself between Ben and the alien general. "What do you want?" Max demanded, his stance making it clear he was no ordinary grandfather. Draykor's mouth curved into what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "I want what any conqueror wants, human. Power." His gaze shifted back to Ben. "You have no idea what you're carrying, child. The Omnitrix is not merely a transformation device. It is the key to awakening the Titan. and I will claim its power. Ben's mind raced. The Titan, just like in his dream. The massive metal hand still protruding from the earth suddenly made terrible sense. This wasn't coincidence. Somehow, he'd been warned. "Not happening," Ben said, his voice steadier than he felt. His hand shot to the Omnitrix, twisting the dial until he found the silhouette he wanted. "It's hero time!" He slammed down on the dial, and green light exploded around him. The familiar sensation of transformation washed over him. His body hardening, crystallizing, growing taller and stronger. In seconds, where Ben had stood, now stood Diamond Head, his crystalline body gleaming in the desert sun. "Yeah?" Diamond Head challenged, his voice deeper and resonating. "You and what army?" Draykor didn't seem concerned. In fact, he smirked, a dangerous expression on his alien features. Then, he raised his hand in a commanding gesture toward the massive metal appendage protruding from the earth. The giant hand clenched into a fist, and the ground began to shake more violently than before. The desert floor cracked and split as something massive began to rise. Sand cascaded like waterfalls as an enormous figure emerged from the depths. A colossal war machine that dwarfed even the largest buildings Ben had ever seen. It was humanoid in shape, but clearly mechanical. A titan of metal and energy. Its body was covered in ancient symbols that glowed with the same red energy as Draykor's ship. Its head was a fearsome visage, with a crest-like structure and those same burning red eyes from Ben's dream. As it rose to its full height, easily 500 feet tall, it cast a shadow that engulfed them all. "Behold," Draykor announced with pride, "Titanex, the celestial war machine, created eons ago by a civilization whose name has been forgotten to time. A weapon so powerful it was feared across 12 galaxies." The massive construct stood motionless for a moment, sand and earth still falling from its frame. Then, its eyes flared brighter, and a mechanical voice boomed across the desert. "Activation sequence complete! Systems online! Awaiting Master's command!" Draykor's expression was triumphant. "And now, the destruction begins." Without warning, Titanex swung its massive arm in a sweeping arc, aiming directly at where Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max stood. Diamond Head reacted instantly, creating a crystal shield and pushing his family back. The Titan's fist struck the ground just yards away, the impact sending shockwaves through the earth that knocked them all off their feet. Sand exploded upward like a geyser, and the resulting crater was large enough to swallow a house. "Gwen, Grandpa, get back to the rust bucket!" Diamond Head shouted, already knowing his crystalline form wouldn't be enough against something of this magnitude. His attacks would barely scratch the surface of the Titan. As his family retreated, Diamond Head dodged another devastating blow from Titanex. The ground shook with each impact, making it difficult to maintain balance. He needed a different approach, a different alien. Slapping the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, Ben transformed again. Green light flashed, and in Diamond Head's place stood Upgrade, the liquid metal galvanic mechamorph. If he couldn't fight Titanex directly, maybe he could control it from within. "Let's see how you handle a system upgrade," he called out, launching himself toward the Titan's massive leg. Upgrade's body stretched and flowed, making contact with the ancient metal. Immediately, he began to merge with the Titan's systems, his black and green patterns spreading across the surface, but something was wrong. Instead of taking control as he expected, Ben felt his consciousness being pulled deeper into the machine. His mind was suddenly flooded with visions, not his own memories, but recordings stored within Titanex's ancient databanks. He saw planets burning, entire civilizations falling before the Titan's might, armies of advanced aliens fleeing in terror as Titanex laid waste to their worlds. He witnessed a great battle, multiple civilizations uniting against the threat, finally managing not to destroy the Titan, but to seal it away on a remote planet, Earth. And then, cutting through the chaos of these memories, a final message echoed through his mind, left by those who had imprisoned the Titan. Only the true wielder of the Omnitrix can command the Titan. Ben's consciousness snapped back to the present. He understood now. The Omnitrix wasn't just the key to awakening Titanex. It was the control mechanism, designed as a failsafe by the same ancient beings who had created both devices. He wasn't supposed to fight the Titan. He was meant to control it. With renewed purpose, Upgrade pushed deeper into Titanex's systems. He could feel Draykor trying to maintain command through some kind of neural interface, but the connection was weak compared to the bond between the Omnitrix and the Titan. The Omnitrix and Titanex, they're connected, Ben realized. They must have been created by the same aliens. Focusing all his will, Ben pushed the Omnitrix to its absolute limit. The device began to glow with golden light rather than its usual green, its circuits flaring as energy coursed through both it and Titanex. The Titan's massive body flickered, its red energy conduit stuttering as two control systems battled for dominance. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a surge of power that Ben felt through his entire being, Titanex's glowing red eyes turned green. On the ground below, Draykor stumbled backward, his neural control device sparking uselessly in his hand. "No! Impossible!" he roared, his composure finally breaking. "The control systems were calibrated to my genetic signature!" Inside Titanex, Ben felt a surge of triumph. Guess what? He projected his voice through the Titan's external speakers, the sound booming across the desert. "The Titan listens to me now!" With Ben in control, Titanex moved with newfound grace and purpose. No longer the mindless destroyer, it was now a defender. Ben directed the massive machine toward Draykor and his ship, each step covering hundreds of feet, sending tremors through the ground. Draykor's forces, dozens of smaller craft that had emerged from the mothership, opened fire. Energy weapons blazed across the sky, impacting against Titanex's armor. But under Ben's control, the Titan raised a massive arm, generating an energy shield that absorbed the attacks. A single punch from Titanex sent several enemy craft spiraling into the sand. The Titan moved with surprising speed for something so massive, each movement precise and deliberate as Ben learned to navigate its complex systems. Draykor, seeing his forces decimated, retreated to his command ship. "This isn't over, human!" His voice boomed over external speakers. "The Titan is mine, by right of conquest." The mothership's engines flared as it began to ascend, but not before a massive weapon port opened on its underside. Energy gathered at an alarming rate, a planetary-scale weapon powering up. "He's targeting Bellwood," Ben realized, accessing Titanex's scanning systems. The weapon was aimed not at them, but toward the distant city where his home and countless innocent people resided. Ben didn't hesitate. Through Titanex, he raised both of the Titan's massive arms, palms outward. Ancient defense systems activated. Systems Ben somehow knew how to use, as if the knowledge was being fed directly into his mind through the Omnitrix's connection. Draykor fired his weapon, a beam of concentrated energy that cut through the sky like a spear of light. But instead of continuing toward its target, the beam struck Titanex's outstretched hands. The Titan's body hummed with power as it absorbed the devastating attack, energy conduits glowing brighter and brighter across its frame. For a moment, Ben feared the systems would overload. Then, with a mental command, he redirected the absorbed energy. Titanex's chest plate opened, revealing a central core that pulsed with green light. A heartbeat later, the energy was released, not as a destructive beam, but as an expanding sphere that engulfed Draykor's ship. The alien vessel's shields failed instantly, systems overloaded, engines died, and the massive craft was sent spiraling upward, trailing smoke and debris as emergency protocols launched it back into space, defeated but not destroyed. The battle was over. The remaining enemy craft retreated, following their commander's ship into the atmosphere until they vanished from sight. Exhausted from the mental strain of controlling such a massive and complex system, Ben directed Titanex back to the fissure from which it had emerged. The Titan knelt, systems powering down as it prepared to return to dormancy. Ben felt himself being gently ejected from the machine's systems, upgrades formed separating from the ancient metal. As Titanex settled back into the earth, the ground closing around it like water, Ben transformed back to human form. The Omnitrix on his wrist was hot to the touch, cooling down from the unprecedented power it had channeled. He stumbled backward, breathing hard, suddenly aware of how much energy the experience had drained from him. Gwen and Grandpa Max rushed to his side, having watched the entire battle from a safe distance. "That was insane!" Gwen gasped, for once not hiding her amazement behind a sarcastic comment. "You controlled that thing like you built it yourself." "Are you all right?" Grandpa Max asked, his concern evident as he steadied Ben. Ben nodded, still catching his breath. "I'm okay. Just tired." He looked down at the Omnitrix, noticing something different. Beneath the familiar green hourglass symbol, a new icon had appeared, faint but unmistakable, resembling Titanex's distinctive silhouette. "I think," Ben said slowly, a smile spreading across his face despite his exhaustion, "the Omnitrix just got a whole lot cooler." As they made their way back to the rust bucket, the desert returning to its usual quiet state, Ben couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the Omnitrix might hold. If it could connect to something as ancient and powerful as Titanex, what else might it be capable of? And more importantly, what other forgotten weapons or technologies might be out there, waiting to be discovered or misused? One thing was certain: Draykor would return. Beings like him always did, but when that day came, Ben would be ready. Not just with his usual roster of alien transformations, but with something far more powerful, a Titan that responded to his command. The rust bucket's engine rumbled to life, and they continued their journey, leaving behind only a massive depression in the sand where Titanex had briefly risen. To anyone else passing by, it might look like nothing more than an unusual geological formation. But Ben knew better. Deep beneath the earth, a colossal guardian now slumbered, one that he alone could command. As they drove away, Ben glanced down at the Omnitrix once more. The new symbol pulsed faintly, as if acknowledging his thoughts. He smiled to himself. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever enemies might come seeking the Omnitrix or Titanex, they would find more than they bargained for. Because Ben Tennyson wasn't just a kid with the ability to transform into aliens anymore. He was now the controller of one of the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. A responsibility he didn't take lightly, but one he was determined to honor. The desert stretched endlessly before them, the horizon shimmering with heat. Somewhere out there, new adventures waited, new challenges, new discoveries about the Omnitrix and its true purpose, and Ben was ready for all of it. The rust bucket disappeared into the distance, leaving behind only tire tracks in the sand, and far below the Earth's surface, a sleeping Titan with green eyes, waiting for the day its master would call upon it again, to be continued.